There are a few questions in here. The first question is, can you explain what the bodhisattva's precepts are? Bodhisattva's precepts. Have you already taken the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts first? People taking the bodhisattva's precepts have to have taken the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. If they do that, it will be doing it accordingly instead of suddenly get into bodhisattva's precepts. What are the 5 precepts? Let's put bodhisattva's precepts aside first and briefly talk about the 5 precepts. Of course, the 3 refuges, taking refuge under the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Of course, there is a ceremony for it. There's a lot of meaning in it. So you have to understand the meaning, and you have to participate in the ceremony, and you really have to pay attention when we're doing the ceremony of taking the 3 refuges. That is outside the question. That you have to do. What are the 5 precepts? Abstaining from killing, abstaining from stealing, abstaining from sexual misconduct, abstaining from lying, abstaining from intoxicants. So these are the 5 precepts. And you have to know the meaning of each one of these in detail. It's not so simple on the superficial meaning of it. You really have to dig into it. It's what exactly is the meaning of not killing, not committing sexual misconduct, not stealing. It contains subtle meaning in it. For example, stealing. If you already have taken this precept, you access the computer and you start to download other people's information that has copyright, you are stealing. So it's very subtle. People may have thought that they have taken the 5 precepts, and then they're breaking it every day because they misunderstand the precepts. They don't get to know the details. Because finally, these 5 precepts, if the subtlety of each one precept is further developed, it becomes the precepts of the monk, precepts of the nuns, 250, 348 of the nuns. So the 250 precepts of the bhikshus or the monk and 348 precepts of the bhikshuni or the nuns are developed from this 5. It's just the subtlety and the detail of it, it's all developed into a variety of precepts. So you can see how subtle each precept is. But being just an upasaka or upasika or layman, you don't have to follow the extreme subtlety of each, 250 or 348, but you really have to have even the general guidelines you need to know, not just taking the precepts and that's it, and you don't know the detail. Taking it, the second step is to learn the details and follow them. And some people think that by taking precepts, I'll be under confined. Everything I do will be under restrictions. Now it's restricted. I can do whatever I want before I take the precepts. Now I've taken the precepts. It seems that I'm living under a prison. That's a misconception. When you have taken the precepts, you live more joyfully. You live more peacefully. You feel more freedom in your spirituality. We usually think the opposite. We thought that we're taking the precepts, we're being restricted, but it's not true. You've taken those precepts, you're more peaceful, you have more joy, because you know that you won't make any mistakes. You know that you won't create bad karma. You're not only knowing it, actually you're doing it. That means you're not creating any bad karma. And remember, bad karma leads to bad result. In retribution, for bad karma you suffer. If you're not creating any bad karma, you don't have to suffer in retribution. Apart from that, or if you follow the precepts, you're creating good karma. When you're creating good karma, good results will come. Imagine when all the good effects come, would you be happy? Or on the other hand, when all the bad effects come because you have broken the precepts or because you have done killing, lying, sexual misconduct and all that, that would only give you suffering. But ordinary people, they just think the opposite. They think they want to be free. They want to do whatever they want. Does not matter as long as they're happy. And they don't know what is happiness. So, following precepts, not only do these precepts give you more freedom, they help you to pave your way for enlightenment. So those are the 5 precepts. And what are bodhisattva's precepts? The bodhisattva's precepts include all the 5 precepts. Except that the bodhisattva's precepts concentrate more on every single thought. The 5 precepts emphasize more on the actions. You could have germinated a thought of killing, but as long as you stop it in time, you won't do any killing. You can germinate, or you will, if you can't control yourself, you germinate a thought of sexual misconduct, but you haven't done it. Then you haven't broken the precept, but you still have that thought. When it comes to the forefront, you stopped it because you have that energy of the precepts, spiritual energy to stop you from doing it. But yet, in your mind, you still have that thought in you. But the Bodhisattva's precepts are more geared towards, hey, purify your thought. Start from your thought, not just the action. So, more and more, you're purifying your thought. Remember what we said back in the meditation hall? We said we have to be mindful. You watch every thought. Every thought has 4 causes, you know that? I already mentioned. It's good to reiterate it here again. The main cause, the immediately preceding cause, the object cause, and the precipitating cause. The main cause in the Chinese language is yin yuan. The immediately preceding cause, ci di yuan. The object cause, suo yuan yuan. The precipitating cause, zheng shang yuan. So all these causes work towards your thought being born and your thought sustaining, your thought carry you into action, and then your thought disintegrate. So Bodhisattva's precepts are geared towards watching your thought, not just your action. So it's more difficult. It's more in detail. You have to study the sutra on the Bodhisattva's precepts. There are a few sutras who specify the Bodhisattva's precepts. They all lay down in there. So we really have to bring our Bodhisattva's precept sutra to explain it if we want to detail. This is just the main points. The main point is precepts not just in the action, in the thought. It goes into more subtle, into the subtlety of the body, mind, and speech. So that answers the first questions. You really have to study it before you know. The second question is, how does Buddhism explain the origin of life? In other religions, they explain God created all humans and living things. That's the general questions that people like to ask all the time. And no religion on earth can explain these questions to you, to your satisfaction. And this question is actually a loop in itself. In other words, you can never find the answer. And the Buddhist teaching has a few explanations for this. There is the temporal explanation and the spiritual explanation for the origin of life. Let's get to the easy part first, the temporal explanation. Billions and billions and billions of years ago, people from heaven, people in heaven, they enjoy happiness, longevity, but they still die. They're not ultimate. The Buddha told us that heaven is not ultimate. You have to go beyond heaven. Your nirvana, it's beyond heaven. Because why in heaven? If you have done meritorious deeds, you'll be reborn in heaven. Enjoy joy and longevity, but you still die. But there's 28 heavens, 28 levels. Remember, we have the Kama Dhatu, Rupa Dhatu, and Arupa Dhatu. I'm not going to explain that in detail because it takes time. So billions and billions and billions of years ago, there was one heaven, the light sound heaven. Let's do it. The light, we call it the light sound heaven. And beings in there, or part of the beings in there, they come down to this world. And they come down to this world playfully. And they eat or they enjoy whatever in this world provide. And after they have taken this, after they have consumed it, their karma increase in retribution, and they can't go back. They can't fly back to where they belong, and they stay on this earth. If you really want to trace the most immediate origin, that's the origin. You're from another beings. They came down, and that's the origin. But then that's just a temporal explanation. What is the spiritual explanation? Goes beyond our comprehension. Time has no beginning and no end. The origin of it, you can't trace it. Where does the wind come from? The most prominent scientists would not know the answer. Where does wind come from? Wind comes because of many causes. Because of the change in humidity, change in wind speed, because of, you name it. So many causes. No scientist on earth can tell you where does wind come from. Because what is the origin of life? So many causality put together that we exist. So many causes. We can put causes under category. We cannot identify one because it's impossible. There's no one cause that explains it. Where does the wind come from? Nobody knows. Wind comes because of so many causes. Not without a cause. So many causes to make it happen. And the Buddha knows. Because the Buddha goes beyond origin. Beyond the understanding of origin. Beyond comprehension. We always live in a world of duality. We always say, there's a beginning, there's an end, there's a high, there's a low, there's love, there's a hatred, there's the healthy, there is the sickness, there's the poor and the rich. We always compare. We like to compare. Logically speaking, if you think there is the origin, there must be an end. If you believe there's an end, that's nihilism. If you believe there's an end, it's a very dangerous belief. The end, that means no more existence. Is it possible to have an end? When this body dies, it goes to the next body, goes to the next body, goes to the next body. It has no end. So there was one person who was at the road, at the crossroad. He was walking and come to a cross section where they're at the crossroad. And suddenly he was shot by an arrow. It shot into his heart, close to his heart, not immediate death. And he collapsed. And all the other bystanders flocked up to him and tried to find out what happened. And that arrow was a poisonous arrow. And one bystander said, "Hey, what happened to this guy? Where does the arrow come from? Does it come from the south, east, west, north?" Another said, "What is this arrow made up of? It seems to be metal, and it seems to be wood, and it seems to be stone. Let's find out what this arrow comes from, and how people make this arrow. Why somebody shoot an arrow at him? Let's find out all these reasons." And by the time you get answer to these reasons, you're dead. The man is dead. The most immediate urgency is to rush him to the hospital, not trying to find out the origin, not to find out the reasons. By the time we want to find out the reason of the origin of life, we're too old to practice. By the time that man make everybody happy by providing an answer, he's dead. The most important is to cure your emergency first. Follow your precepts, practice it. Don't get into reincarnation anymore. You'll find that answer when you're at nirvana. Why do you have to find out what kind of arrow? Where does it come from? What is it made of? It's getting late. Time is ticking. Everybody is approaching that destination called death. And right at the moment of the death, suddenly you say, "Oh, this is a dream. I shouldn't have worried about the origin of life. I should practice." It's too late. So this question, it's you need it and you don't need it. There's no answer for it. And if you think that if Buddhism can provide me a sufficient answer, a good answer, I'll believe in Buddhism. If other religions give me a better answer, I'll believe. I tell you, no religion on earth can explain this. And there's no need to explain this. And I say no prominent scientist on earth knows exactly where wind comes from. And that's all for this answer. I don't want to linger on. Next question. When we talk about 10 kinds of wrongdoing, 3 with the body, 4 with the speech, and 3 with the mind, we mentioned frivolous speech. What is this, and how does it generate bad karma? From the speech, or from the mouth, from the speech, we have 4. We could do 4 wrongdoings. Lying, slandering, tattletale, frivolous speech. What is frivolous speech? Frivolous speech is not truthful speech. For example, if you met someone who really looks bad, on that particular day, she's not dressing properly, and she's not that good, and she feels yucky, and she's quite emotional, and doesn't feel good at all, and she doesn't appear to be in her best demeanor. And then you come up to her and say, "Hey, you look beautiful today." So that's frivolous speech. You're not being truthful. And you could be talking meaningless things. child play things. That does not help anybody. That's wasting time. It's not truthful. That is not necessary. Those are frivolous speech. And how does it create bad karma? It creates the karma of ignorance. It squander your valuable time away. You're wasting your time doing frivolous speech. Chit-chat all the time instead of practicing. You're going to different places, different residences, and chit-chat and doing all this nonsense talk. That's frivolous speech. You're wasting time. Time is too precious to be wasted because the clock is ticking for everybody. You may not notice it. It's ticking. And I see people now, which I remember their appearances 5 or 6 years ago. They look much younger. They're not growing any younger. Everybody is getting older and older and older. Your energy is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Your machine, the functioning of your machine is not improving every day once you get beyond 50. Next question. What is the difference between a mantra and a sutra? A sutra is a discourse. What's the meaning of a sutra? A sutra is a Sanskrit word. It means joining together for memory. It's just like a beat with a rosary, with one beat after another, using a string to join it together. So the meaning, the philosophy, the truth of what the Buddha said, we use words to join it together. So this joining words together, and it contains meaning. It contains meaning so that people can recite it, memorize it, and remember it, and practice it. Like a sermon. That's a sutra. A mantra, it's an utterance that summarizes a lot of meaning. And when the Chinese monk translate them, they couldn't really translate everything in detail because one word could contain a lot of meaning. So they just translate the sound of it instead of translating the meaning. For example, Om Mani Padme Hum. If people do not explain to you the meaning, you won't know because that's a mantra. It just contains the sound and not the meaning, because meaning is a Sanskrit meaning. However, people who study Sanskrit, you know the meaning. And from that perspective, a mantra also contains meaning. But when the Chinese chant a mantra, because they didn't translate the meaning, only transcribe the sound, they don't know the meaning. But we know that Om Mani Padme Hum, that has meaning. Om means, very briefly to explain it, Om is the mother of all sound, the origin of all good deeds, the origin of all merits. Mani is the most precious jewel on earth. That symbolizes the Buddha nature. And Padme is flower, it's lotus, which symbolizes purity of body, action, and mind. And home is a bodhicitta, it's a seed, a bodhi seed planted. Every time when you chant Om Mani Padme Hum, a bodhi seed is planted in your consciousness. So it all has meaning. So that's the mantra. And just to give a few words more, maybe it's easy to differentiate the meaning of a sutra and a mantra. Is easy. It's more difficult to differentiate between a dharani and a mantra. Dharani, Mahakaranika Dharani. Remember we chant this morning? Usually we abbreviated it by saying the mantra of compassion. Actually, it should be called the dharani of compassion. Dharani is a longer version. Mantra is a short version. It's a short, we call it mantra. Long, we call it a dharani. So, Mahakaranika Chitta Dharani. Maha means big, Karanika means compassion, Chitta means mind, and Dharani means a long version of a mantra. Okay, that explains the question. And the second last question. First, thank you for what the temple has been doing to help us build up healthy spirits. I know the importance of the healthy spiritual life in this materially oriented world. As a parent, I would like you give us some advice or suggestions of how to help the next generation, especially the youth, to build up healthy spiritual life. Yeah, it's absolutely important to pay your attention to the younger generation. But the spiritual life is the second step. The first step is the temporal life. When you're with the younger generation, you should set yourself up as an example first. You have to practice what you preach. In other words, you have to practice kindness, compassion, generosity, endurances. You see, you practice the 6 paramitas. The first one is charity, giving out. You teach your children to always be generous. Don't be egoistic. Generous, to give out your help, helping others, being kind to others. That is charity. The second one is morality. Build up a good morality standard, or teach them a high morality standard. How? Watch their behavior. Be honest. You know that, all those temporal code of ethics. And then endurances. Don't be angry all the time, and endure. And if you endure more, then you build up your power inside, and then you're more flexible. You're not working just on impulsive feelings, and all that you can teach. In other words, you start with all this moral code yourself by practicing it yourself. I remember 6 years ago, I think about 6 years ago, there was a gentleman who came to me, and he wanted my advice. He said, my kid is now in grade 10, and he's not studying. He's lazy. He's watching television all the time, and he's just being lazy. And by that time, he was in grade 10 or 11, I don't know. The next year, he's going to university. If he studied like that, he can never get to university. What's the best way of teaching my kid so that he get into university? It seems that it's hopeless. He's getting very low grade at school. And then he said, can I arrange an interview, a meeting for my kid with you, so that maybe there's some private problems that he would like to talk to you and not me. So he arranged a meeting, and I met his kid, a grade 10 or grade 11, I don't know, I forgot. And then after a long discussions, I found out something that the kid didn't even dare to speak up. What did he say? He said, just to summarize it, he said, my dad wanted me to be hardworking and work all the time, and how can I do it? You see, my mom, she got up 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and every night she stayed to watch television until 3 o'clock midnight, and she's always enjoying television, and she's always pushing me to work hard, but she herself is lazy. So how can a lazy mom teaches her kids to be diligent, could be hardworking? You're not setting up an example. And I try to help, and there's a long story. And I think the kid now is at McGill University, graduating this year, or actually graduating last year. So the parents have to set an example, and you're asking me, what should I do to help the generation? Teach them a moral code that you understand. You work hard yourself, and you always set up meeting with your youth, to communicate with them more, find out their problems, sympathetic with them, help them out. No, it does not matter how busy you are. You could be the busiest mom on earth. You could be a single mom looking after a few kids, but you still have to have time for your kids to find out more about them, to communicate with them. Communication is extremely important when you're dealing with kids. The most abusive attitude of a parent is not the physical part. It's the absence part. You're never there when they want you. So that's the most important. Then you understand more about your own children. Then you slowly teach him or her how to achieve that spiritual life. Tell her to get rid of material-oriented desires. And tell him that what happiness, what's the definition of happiness? Happiness is not just from material, it's from inside. It's from within. Now that requires a high intelligence level. If he doesn't have a groundwork, he can't work that high level. You have to provide him with the groundwork about the ordinary moral code of ethics. I guess the answer to this question could be very, very long, and I'm not going to linger on with this. So last question, can meditation help to get rid of emotion, pains from the past? Well, if the past gives you emotions and sadness, the most important is to, whenever it comes up, it's a thought coming. It's a thought coming up. You watched it. You watch it as if you are a third person. Well, this emotion is because of some suffering in the past. And that past is gone. Why do I have to attach to it? The past is not obtainable anymore, and I don't want to obtain it anymore. The past is gone. How come I still linger on to it? Because I feel grief-stricken by it. I feel I still have the pain. I feel it's unfair. Well, think about this. You work out your own karma. Whatever you suffer in the past is because of your own endeavor, because of your own efforts. Repent, change. You already changed to be a new person. Why stay back in the prison of emotion? You came out from the prison of emotion. You already bid farewell to your prison, and you want to go back to it? No more prison. Don't go back. Whenever it comes back, get rid of it. You say, I don't want this anymore. I have a new life. That is gone. That is of the past. No more attachment to it. The past mind is not obtainable. The future mind hasn't come yet. And the present, I'm going to work hard at improving it. So whenever it comes up, you can't help sometimes stopping it from coming up. But when it emerges, you just say, no, don't emerge anymore. You have to train yourself doing this. When the thought comes up, a thought of emotion, a thought of sadness, a thought of bad experience, a thought of abuse, for example, throw it away as if it is garbage. Throw it away as it's garbage in your house that you have to throw outside the door. Don't let it stink the atmosphere. Don't let it stay for too long. Otherwise, it stinks the atmosphere. You have to learn to get rid of it. Throw it away. And after training yourself, every time when it comes up, every time when a thought of emotion, of pain, of suffering comes up, you throw it away as if it's a garbage, then you'll be successful in getting rid of it. But if you hang on to it and being influenced by it, you can't let it go. So it depends on you. Or you can replace the emergence of such feeling by a mantra's power. Whenever it comes up, a feeling of the past experience comes up, just chant Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, to replace it. Because remember, the immediately preceding thought makes way for the next thought. The disappearance of the first moment makes way for the second moment. let that painful feeling disappear to make way for a more active, for a more useful feeling, a feeling of charity, a feeling of endurance, a feeling of wisdom, a feeling of helpfulness and compassion. Replace it. It's all in your mind. It's all in your efforts.